Hello, true believers. This is Doc Hogg, and welcome to episode 46 of Comics and Variety. If you like this channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos, and for the sake of YouTube's search algorithm, please do hit the like button. Okay, today we have part 2 of How to Write Comic Books from our friend and contributor, Mike, the Bloody Red Baron. Okay, cool it, ladies. But before we get to that, let me briefly mention the comic book that I am backing called College of the Dead, created by Adam Post. This comic book is 80% of the way to its goal on Indiegogo, with about 48 hours left. Why should you back this? Well, think of your least favorite SJW woke professor that you had in college, and then think about zombies eating that person. Well, this is the kind of comic book where you can project that onto it. So, let's make this happen. I will provide a link to its Indiegogo campaign in the description below. Alrighty, part 2 of How to Write Comic Books. Let's get to it.
A modern comic has to have pulse and flow, and by that I mean that the pages open up for a big scene and they close down for dialogue. You have to be careful with your dialogue. You don't want to bore the reader. But obviously, a full-page splash of two protagonists slugging it out requires a lot less dialogue than a nine-panel page with two characters talking. The risk is when you have two characters talking, you can't bore the reader, and that means the dialogue has to both reveal character and advance the plot, and it has to be sparing. One of my rules is be original, and that includes in the dialogue. It's essential that you find new ways to say things that have been said 1,000 times before. You must never, ever write, "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore," "Move it, people," or "We have to talk," or any of 1,000 other cliches that you've read 1,000 times in 1,000 comics. Find a new way to say it. Look back into your own history, your own dialogue with your friends, and come up with something original. And when I say be original, it's not that hard because we're all unique human beings. And if you look within yourself and your own interactions with people over the years, you'll find unique language that worked for you or worked for your friend. Remember it, write it down, and use it when it's appropriate. Every page must have an establishing shot. An establishing shot is a single panel that shows everybody involved on that page, every character, in the same physical environment and the relationship to each other. Once you do that, you can jump from talking head to talking head. But you have to have an establishing shot on each page. Well, what if you change scenes in the middle of a page? I advise against that. That's what pages are for. They're like episodes on your favorite TV show. You have 8 minutes of episode and then you break for a commercial. And after the commercial break, you may go to a different scene. But it's difficult to pull off a scene change in the middle of a page. I don't do it. And here's where thumbnails come in. You all know what thumbnails are. They're little representations of the finished page. It's not finished art, but it's enough to show you what's going on in each panel. And most accomplished artists use thumbnails. Steve Rude does, Bill Reinhold does. Every accomplished artist I know, when they're working off a script, will thumbnail the page first so they get a rough idea how they're going to lay it out. And the thumbnail is important because not only does it deal with advancing the story, it deals with design. And a great artist will work 4 or 5 or 6 panels or however many on a page you have into a single coherent design. When you look back and you see it, and you just go, wow. But it also advances the story. You don't want to let the design interfere with clear storytelling. So it's not essential, but it's there for the artist to use. We speak of the pulse and flow of visual dynamics. That means you open, and maybe the first panel is a full-page spread, and then you get into the nuts and bolts of the story, and the second page consists of 5 or 6 panels of characters advancing the story either through dialogue or through action. The modern comic reader is accustomed to this pulse and flow. It adds rhythm to the story, and by that I mean it's good dynamics. That sometimes the story is quiet. It's two people talking to each other, and sometimes the story blows up when people come to blows or there's a big action sequence. As far as single-page images, full-page splashes, don't ever waste your time on a huge head for a single page and have him talk and talk and talk. The full page is for spectacular scenes, and I think they work the best when it's a magnificent establishing shot where you see for the first time an ancient civilization or a temple in a clearing, and you absorb the architectural details. That's when a full-page splash is worthwhile. As for explosions, if you've seen one explosion, you've seen them all. I've seen an awful lot of comic book pages, full-page splashes devoted to explosions. So what? It's a big ball of expanding gas. When I do an explosion, I would never devote more than a third of the page to it at most. These days, I find myself usually using 5 panels per page is a comfortable fit for me, and I manage to tell the story in 5 panels per page. But when required, I will go as high as 7, 9, or 10 panels. It all depends on what the story requires. I have 3 rules. The first rule is it's the storyteller's job to entertain. Keep that foremost in your mind. Oh, what is entertainment? It's everything. It's the art, it's the story, it's the dialogue, it's the characterization. Or as my old writing instructor, Jerry McNeely, said, you make them laugh a little bit, you make them cry a little bit, you scare the hell out of them, and that's entertainment. The second rule is show, don't tell. Now, this sounds so simple, but comics are a visual medium. And you can do the same thing in a novel as well. It's much better to show than to tell. You could say John is a mean man, or you can show John kicking a puppy, and you know which one is more effective. And the third rule, of course, is be original, and we already covered that. When I say be original in your story ideas, be original in your dialogue and how you tell a story. They say there are only 7 basic plots in fiction. I don't know about that. It may be true. How many vengeance stories have we read? And yet we still love vengeance stories. So it's your responsibility as a storyteller to make it fresh, to put a new spin on it. The other day, I attended a comic convention with my old friend Rags Morales, a terrific artist with whom I worked on Turok for Valiant. And Rags teaches at the Joe Kubert School, or he did, and Rags had some rules that he told me. And his first rule is the artist is the director. It's up to the artist to decide who goes where. The second rule is if you have a question, ask the writer. The third rule is all pairings are opposite. And I said, what do you mean by that, Rags? And he says, well, when you have 2 protagonists, they spark and play off each other much more effectively if they're not the same. And of course, there are 1,000 examples, but I'll just name a couple. Hawk and Dove. I mean, that's so obvious, it's in the name. Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. Sherlock Holmes is manic, given to grand gestures, not social, and John Watson is the exact opposite. And if you go through fiction and you find these characters, all these pairings in your favorite movies, 48 Hours, another 48 Hours, any buddy cop movie, you understand what Rags means, that they are opposites, they're different, and they play off each other. Rags' fourth rule is art is the creation of something from nothing that is true about the human condition. And this speaks to everything that's gone before here, that when you tell a story, it has to reflect what we know to be true, and often what we know to be true is not necessarily that which is written in history books, but that which we know about humanity and the way humanity behaves. Rags also says if the story starts negative it must end negative. And if it starts happy, it must end happy. I don't necessarily agree with this. I think that you have many great uplifting stories that begin with the hero in misery and he triumphs by the end. But these are Rag's rules, and they work for Rags, and he knows what he's talking about. And finally, Rag's advice for artists is every time you add information to a panel, like another person, for example, or the presence of a dog or an important painting, you pull your camera back a step to encompass that. And this has to do with the establishing shot as well. It goes hand in hand with the establishing shot. So these are just a few rules. They are shaggy and loose about how to create a comic, and I hope they will be of assistance to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. So our goal is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to be uploading a new YouTube video. So go to Ann and Mike Barron YouTube to subscribe and see what new updates are happening. Thanks so much for listening. All right, bye-bye.